So, y'all, I had somebody send me this video of this Alexandria Ocasio Cortez. I could be saying her name wrong. I don't really give a fuck. I had somebody send me this video, and the caption that they sent me, or the message they sent me, they said, "Well, Rob, here's somebody I think you may like. I know how you feel about politics, but here's somebody I think you may like," which I found very intriguing because, for you to know what I think about politics, and this is somebody that I would like, I found that to be very, very interesting. But I wanted to go through this whole video and break it down as I watch it with you guys. Hopefully y'all got some time for that. If not, I understand it's going to be a fairly long video because I'm going to go through her entire hour-long interview, and I'm going to be breaking this shit down as we go along here. And then we'll do our commentary, we'll do our pauses, we'll do all of that, and see what the fuck she has to say to our people. We'll see how everything goes. But without further ado, let's get right into it. Here is AOC, which we know is kind of DOC, though. But let's go.
EJ, Envy, Angela Yee, Charlamagne the Guy. We are the Breakfast Club. We have a special guest in the building.
Yes, indeed.
AOC is what they call him.
Hello.
DOC, nigga, like, what the fuck? I thought we told your ass. Hold on, what the fuck?
Morning.
Welcome, Alexandria Ocasio Cortez. Did I say everything right?
Yep, you got it all right.
He was
welcome.
worried about it. That's why you met with
I
AOC.
met with AOC. I suggested it.
Now, if you look at her, I don't see how she gets to be a would-be people of color. Like, y'all just, even this would-be people of color, she's a white woman with a would-be Spanish name or whatever. But, I mean, come on. She's a goddamn, I told y'all, I described it last night. She is a white woman that probably knows some Spanish and roll her R's to sound ethnic.
But she is AOC.
It's a lot of syllables.
Yes,
It's a lot
it
of
is.
syllables.
How are you this morning?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm blessed. Is it a difficult time right now?
I mean, I think it's a time everyone's a little on edge, with the primary, with the election. There's a lot at stake. So I think there's always going to be high tensions. But so far, I think we're doing well. I think it's been really good. I think it's, given the time and the year and everything, I think we've been holding it together pretty well.
Well, for people that don't know, tell them how you got into politics. Tell them your story. You're from the Bronx. Tell them how you got into where you're at now.
The youngest person ever in Congress, by the way, and it was amazing when you got elected.
And I always say the craziest people in America come from the Bronx and all the Florida.
That is true. That is 100% true.
So how did you get your start?
So I'm a third generation Bronxite. My dad was born in the Bronx. My grandmother moved to the Bronx from Puerto Rico. And growing up,
You see how she try to roll that R? Puerto Rico, like, get the fuck out. That's a white woman, y'all. Don't let it fool you. She's white. About some Puerto Rico, like, get the fuck out of here. I see you rolling R's and shit. I told you.
Being born and raised being born in the Bronx, my parents, we felt a pressure to move out so that I could have an education. Mm-hmm. And I grew up between those two worlds, always coming, my dad had a small business in the Bronx.
Really?
And always growing up with my cousins in the Bronx and my family in the Bronx. And then the idea that our zip code determines so much of the quality of life, that the way that my parents felt like I needed a shot was to be somewhere else. Mm-hmm. And that's never been our values, and it's never been how we wanted things to be. Mm-hmm. And so after I graduated college, I moved back to the Bronx.
Where was that place? Because you said between the Bronx and where else?
So I moved to Yorktown Heights, about 40 minutes north of Westchester. And so then after I graduated college, I moved back to the Bronx, and I started doing education work with young kids. And that kind of brought me into activism. And I never thought that I was going to run for political office. Mm-hmm. I didn't feel like I had the connections or the money or anything like that. But I felt like, this window really opened in 2016 where a lot of activism that was pushed to the edges is now being centered. Mm-hmm. And, I looked at my own backyard, and if we're going to really improve our country, we got to make sure that all pockets, are doing well. And I felt like our representation wasn't good enough. Mm-hmm. It's not just about Democrats versus Republicans sometimes. And sometimes we can do better as Democrats too. And so I decided we're in a primary election.
Let's get it out that she is a Democrat. We understand by now, if you know anything about politics, you understand that Democrats is a soft, easier form of racism, a softer form of racism versus the Republicans, which is a more cruel form of racism. They're kind of blatant with their shit. So we understand that they aren't different things going on. But with her being a Democrat, already, whoever sent me this, she already done picked a side between the two sides that are both trash. So, you know, if a motherfucker don't think I would like anybody, it would have to be somebody that would not be a Democrat or a Republican, just to start off, just in case I'm confusing some people. There's no way a Democrat can win, my favor at all, because I know they some bullshit.
A 20-year incumbent.
Took on the system.
Yeah, and I was outspent 10-1, $3 million put in against me, but we did it the old-fashioned way, organizing, people in the community, aunts, uncles, abuelas, everybody knocking on doors, and it was probably one of the biggest upsets of 2018.
Now, for those of us who aren't Spanishly inclined, what did that mean?
Abuelas, grandmas.
Grandma, okay, got you.
Did a lot of people who traditionally weren't voting, did they come out to vote?
Yes, we expanded the electorate about 68% above the last off-year midterm primary. So we had young people voting. We had people with 2 jobs voting. We had people who had never voted before voting. People that hadn't voted since Obama in 2008 were coming out and voting again. And that's how we really changed this thing, because we're not going to change our outcomes with the same voters that have been determining all of our other outcomes.
Absolutely.
And we know that, and for a lot of people, especially coming from the Bronx, I understand the cynicism of not voting 10,000%. Because how many politicians have come through and promised things and then just ended up being major disappointments? And that erodes people's faith. But ultimately, if we're not at least suspending our disbelief for 1 day or 2 days on election day, we can go back to the cynicism. We're just asking for 2 days out of the year to just cast a vote, because the system that we have now is with the electorate that we have now. And when we
So this is her basically saying, even if you don't fuck with voting, just go out there and do it, just because. Basically, just go out here and cast a vote. It doesn't matter whether you believe in it. I understand the cynicism and the fact that politicians can lie and campaign and come in there and do nothing and nothing happens. But we just need you for 2 days just to go out there and vote anyway. Basically, this is, this would be a person being on that political mindset that allows, or to me, that makes me not trust them, because they say shit doesn't make any sense. Just go vote.
That electorate, really unpredictable, positive things can happen.
Now, what's your relationship with Bernie Sanders?
Well,
he a racist.
I organized for Bernie in 2016, but I didn't know him personally back then. I was just in the South Bronx, where we set up an organizing hub out of an old nail salon on 138th.
So you never met him at that time. You just
never met him. I met him after I won my primary election.
Okay.
But now, now we speak a lot more often, and he is something of a mentor as well,
really?
In terms of how you navigate a system that is so hostile to working people.
Well, can you dispel what are some of the misconceptions?
Hold on, let me just say, if Bernie Sanders is her mentor, that means that I'm sure she's also anti-reparations for black people. I'm sure she is. I don't know. As we go through this again, I didn't watch all of it. I just watched a little bit of it because I said I wanted to come on here and watch this thing live with y'all, because the first couple things she said were problematic to me. So I said, well, let me just do this with y'all. But if Bernie Sanders is a mentor, that means that she is anti-reparations for black people. That would have to mean that. Or she's completely anti-black people. I don't know, fully, but it sounds like if that's your mentor, then you probably think along the same lines as him. But we'll see what's going on here. But it doesn't sound like that she's going to be for reparations for black people if Bernie Sanders is our mentor?
Democratic socialism.
I think there's a lot of misconceptions. One is that there's a huge generational divide. Older people tend to think of democratic socialism through the lens of the Cold War, right? Like they think of communism and they think of all of these things. Younger people, I think, our views on democratic socialism have been really shaped in our political upbringing. And I think this is something that I try to communicate to people. The first time I ever voted in an election, when I turned 18, was for Barack Obama. And now the people who voted for Barack Obama at the youngest possible age that they could vote for him, now we're in our 30s.
Okay.
And so the last 10 years, our entire adult political lives have been shaped by the discourse. And so since the time I was 18 years old, Republicans and people at large have called healthcare socialist, public education socialist. They've called systems that the rest of the modern developed world has, like universal healthcare, paid family leave, tuition-free public colleges and universities. All of those things are called socialist or democratic.
Well, if you listen out, if you keep up with Bernie Sanders and his talking points, she's sounding like him right now. This is kind of more, and this is why people actually like Bernie Sanders, because they like the ideas of America catching up to the rest of the fucking world, which I'm not against that. I understand the idea for, universal health care and, free tuition. I get those ideas. But what I don't be hearing in any of these motherfuckers is anything about black folk. And that's one thing you have to be mindful of, even when you're hearing these trinkets being spread around and thrown around, these trigger words like universal, you know what I'm saying, like for all. When you hear these type of words, you have to understand what they're saying is, black people, you're not even special enough. Your situation isn't special or unique enough. And you should understand that your situation is special. Your situation is unique. You're not even unique enough for me to come up with something for you specifically. Because everybody chalks that up as even that's racist. You know what I'm saying? Like, for them to do something specifically for black people, specifically, that's racist. And if you listen to her talking right now, she sounds like Bernie Sanders. You can tell that he is her mentor. It's more like a classism type of thing. Let me just try to do something for everybody. And that way, black people will be swept into that, that good deed. And by default, they will be improved like everybody, while everybody else is improved as well. So it's that, they say that one tide raises all boats or some shit like that. It's that mentality. And she's sounding like Bernie Sanders right now. And I don't fuck with him. So as we go through here, I'm sure she's going to say a lot of other problematic shit.
But for me, while some people say, oh, this comes from like Karl Marx and all of these things, my political ideology has really come from people in the American tradition like Howard Thurman, Martin Luther King, even Albert Einstein was a democratic socialist.
Martin Luther King.
Ella Baker, James Baldwin. All of these folks come from a tradition of critique.
Y'all know how these motherfuckers, they love throwing Martin Luther out there, man. Martin Luther King was for reparations, though. Like, y'all gotta say the sleep Martin Luther King. Like, y'all can't just say Martin Luther King. Y'all gotta say that when he was asleep as fuck. You can't just keep throwing that man's name around like that. That's crazy.
This obsession with money and profit and capital at all human and environmental costs. And when you actually examine our history, and when you actually look at the present day, some of the most popular policies and things that we have are not capitalist. Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, libraries, public schools, firefighters, infrastructure, none of these things were built because they come at a profit. We've decided that some things are sacred, that we don't make money off of the backs of babies trying to educate them to read.
It's just being a human being.
There are some things, exactly. There are some things that should be economic or social rights, and we've established that as such.
It's like, to me, when I hear democratic socialism, I hear compassionate capitalism. Why not tweak the message just a little bit?
Now, see, one thing about Charlemagne is he says some really random ass, silly ass shit. That's his job, I think, is to just say little stupid shit randomly. Compassionate capitalism. Like, that's an oxymoron. Because the purpose of capitalism is for somebody to have more than somebody else. For somebody to be at the top eating while everybody else starves. That's how capitalism works. That's how that's how it functions. The motherfuckers at the top, the people doing the real work don't get shit. And the motherfuckers at the top, the CEOs and all this shit, they get the bread, they chilling, they raising their families good, while the workers getting trashed. There's no such thing as compassionate capitalism. It doesn't make any sense. But we'll see what the fuck goes on here.
I think there's a lot of people will I think they'll internalize it, or they'll have a concept that's best for them. Mm-hmm. And so if that's how you see it, then I think that's how you see it. I do think that there are important differences because, Social Security, the idea that our elders should age with dignity, mm-hmm. It's just not capitalism. Mm-hmm. It's compassionate capitalism to me is like raising the minimum wage a little bit. And to me, democratic socialism is unionizing your workplace or having a worker cooperative. It's a different structure. Mm-hmm. And it's like having a little bit more of a compassionate version of the system that's already stripping people of so much right now.
Right.
I think we need more than that. I think we need changes in workplaces, whether it's worker cooperatives, profit sharing, things like that, where people who actually work in workplaces are rewarded, as opposed to just people at the very top.
Okay.
Is really important. And so, if it makes some people more comfortable to say compassionate capitalism, that's one thing. But I think ultimately we need to be clear about
basically,
the policies
say whatever
that
the fuck you want to say. But
I'll tell you something, I like the fact that you shake shit up.
Thank you.
Okay, and you've really challenged the senior leadership in the Democratic Party. How's your relationship with them now?
I think it's I think the one thing that I'm thankful for is that I do think that people now know that now that I'm a year in, that I'm not doing this to play games. This is not like an ego thing. This is not for my health. I think there is a certain degree of respect that they know that when I'm being a pain in the butt, it's over an issue. Mm-hmm. It's over families. Okay. It's always for a reason. It's always to make sure that we're pushing as hard as possible. And it may be inconvenient. For example, there were 2 bills pushing through right now in Congress on marijuana deregulation and legalization, or cannabis deregulation and legalization. So one is a justice bill, and it's making sure that we are taking care of and expunging people's records, and that we are making right in the criminal justice side. Right. And the other side is the banking side, which is to allow banks to actually deal with incoming money from what we now deem as federally illegal in purchases of cannabis. And so, one of the confrontations that I had this year was we should not pass the banking bill first. Right. We should pass the justice bill first.
Right. That seems like a given.
Easy.
To
us,
I
mean,
to us, it's a given.
Angela Yee got
of course, the easier thing.
If Angela Yee get it and she dumb as hell, then this is easy. There should be no other way, other than to talk about the justice side of this thing first before we even deal with the banks, because we know that banks are fucking savages. They don't give a fuck. And as a caveat, they know they're going to be bailed out at all times. It's been shown historically. That's one of the first things Barack Obama did, y'all's boy, was bail out the banks. So fuck the banks. Justice should come before everything. The fact that that's even a conversation lets you know the type of country that you are living in, the type of country that people are trying to even go into politics in, is because the banks would even have any pushback on that, and the government would actually be in limbo about trying to decide this. This is how fucked up this government is. That's what I be talking about. Some stuff should just be natural, normal, humanitarian type shit, and these motherfuckers turn into a goddamn struggle for no reason.
This is the banking bill, right? Because these banks do not care about whether cannabis is legal or not. If anything, they want it legal so that they can have that in their banks.
Of course.
But they are not as invested in the expungement of people's records.
Yeah, the people that are locked up doing 20,
Exactly.
30 years.
Right.
Exactly.
The black and brown people.
Yeah, and
talked
here's the
about this.
actual problem
And
is
Charlamagne
that
with this black and brown
is
shit,
that the
chill out.
people who made money and profited off of private prisons
Right.
now get to turn around and take that capital and be the first people to invest in the market for marijuana
That's
and,
right.
and cannabis.
That's a good
And so
point.
the same people who profit off of private prisons can
That's a
now
good
profit
point.
off the legalization of marijuana. Meanwhile, it's our communities that are still dealing with the scourge, even if you're out,
Right.
still having that on your record,
Right,
keeping you
right.
from
I agree
employment,
with
from
that.
housing, from having a good job or getting back into school.
Uh-huh.
And so right now, it's one of those things where it's like seen as annoying or it's a fight because I'm saying we should do things differently, because when you pass the justice piece first and the banks understand that the justice piece needs to go first before the banking piece, all of a sudden you will get that banking support on the justice piece.
Okay.
But I think ultimately the relationship is okay.
I understand that what she's saying as far as the justice coming before the banks, and I don't necessarily know that the banks would really support, but I know they would want to get their shit hurried up. A lot of times, you dealing in politics, a lot of these motherfuckers just do shit just to hurry up and get their shit in. You know what I'm saying? Like, so if the justice bill was to be presented first, and that they would know we got to deal with this first, then the banks would be behind it just to hurry up and get it through there so they can go ahead and get their shit in. Even if they don't give a fuck really, they would be behind it just based on that. So I understand her logic on that, and I do agree with her putting that first, because there are way too many. And the fact that she's having to fight that, the fact that there was anybody that would argue against that, again, this lets you know the type of government. This is why I don't believe in motherfucking voting and shit like that. This is a prime example, because here is her. Now, again, I'm going to continue to go through here. But here is her. And she is entered into the political arena. But she has to fight things that, this government is too corrupt. Like, you shouldn't have to fight. You got people sitting in prison and billions of dollars being made off of marijuana. Like, come on. That shouldn't be a goddamn fight. That should be a given.
No, I'm not trying to curry favor or be liked, but ultimately I think that's also why there's some kind of respect there too, because people know that it's about issues.
It's definitely not easy to be in the position that you're in, right? You get a lot of criticism. I saw the New York Post did 20 stories on you in one day.
They're obsessed.
You hot out
They're
here. You hot out
obsessed. And
here.
they're the craziest stories. But another thing I was going to say is that you are trying to work really hard to make sure, like you said, you don't want to be lonely anymore, and bring more women and bring younger people into office and help them and encourage them to run for office and support them financially, because it is people have the perception that if I want to run for office, I have to have millions of dollars even to be able to have this campaign and to have people go out and vote for me. So let's talk about some of the people who you are actually supporting, because you've started your own political action committee to help support those people.
Yeah, no, I'm really
See if somebody
excited about this
or
because also all of it is people funded. So often, here's the rub too, is that so often if you're a woman, if you're a person of color, if you're queer or trans or have any sort of, if you're working class or poor.
I don't like that these motherfuckers get mentioned with black. Like, everybody gets mentioned with black folk and shit. Like, I don't like that shit. I don't know if that makes something wrong with me or not, but queer and trans, what the fuck are we even talking about? What are you saying when you run down this list? Let's hear it. I'm going to try to hear her out, but I don't like that.
It is really hard to break into that system. And so often, the easiest way is to do it the same way that everyone else has done it, which is to curry favor with special interest groups or lobbyists or corporations.
Right, exactly.
And especially because it's kind of hot right now to support women, it's also hot right now for, Wall Street to maybe support a woman candidate. And so what we want to do is make sure that we're fielding diverse candidates that also continue to have the integrity of fighting for progressive causes. So it's not just what you look like or who you are, it's also matching that with your experience and making sure that we can support you in a way where you can stay real and stay who you are. And so that's the important piece that I think we're trying to bring in. And so we've endorsed a couple of candidates
they black or what?
In the Bronx, in the South Bronx.
Okay, are they black or what?
Lopez, who's a long-time community organizer.
Hold on. Lopez? See, they look out for each other. Let me see if I hear some black folk in here. I'm gonna see. I may be jumping the gun, and I may have to fucking go back and apologize here in a second. But just let me hear.
That's, she's formerly homeless. She has these experiences in the shelter system. And I believe, there's a lot of people out there in Washington or in Albany, and they think they're experts because they read all the white papers and because they, talk to policy experts. They don't know that life, basically. But there is no replacement for the lived experience. Right, exactly. No one knows the shelter system better than someone who's lived in the shelter. Right. No one understands, somebody black, though? Healthcare the way that someone who's had to navigate this system works, and a lot of what I know and what I bring to policy too is my experience as a waitress. I waitressed when I was running for office, and before then, not for like a summer, but for years. Right. And so I know what it's like to try to buy healthcare off the Obamacare exchange, and it's like $200 a month.
So they took well in the Bronx?
Well, I worked down in Union Square, so
they still got your picture there, on the site.
Yeah,
like Charlemagne. Dude, Charlemagne just dare to say dumb shit. Like he just says, "Do they tip well in the Bronx?" Like what the fuck? This motherfucker dumb as hell. Why aren't you asking her? Can you name a black woman or somebody black that you're endorsing? I heard somebody Lopez that was homeless, and you turn this into a long story. What about somebody black?
It's a lot. It's a lot. And so we have to support those folks. There's in Texas, we have a Senate race coming up.
Okay, let me see.
We're supporting Cristina Ramirez.
Georgette
Gomez out in California. There's a lot of different candidates that were coming out.
Nobody black?
Break this down a little bit more for me, though.
Hold on. Like, we get Rodriguez and all these Gomez. Like, somebody black or no? She named nobody black. I gave her a chance. Y'all saw me give her a chance to name somebody black. Let me hear somebody black. And no. So it looks like she is doing what they always do, looking out for their own. And I'm not knocking her for that. But we cannot allow these motherfuckers to sit out here and act like they fuck with black folk like that. And Charlemagne should have said, anybody black? Do you have a black agenda? He not saying anything. This nigga talking about some goddamn, do they tip well in the Bronx? Nigga.
The organization is going against the DCC, the primary candidates. What exactly does that mean?
Well, I actually wouldn't say that it's going up against the DCCC, but basically Democrats have, like the Democratic Party has a campaign arm. It's called the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee.
That sounds corrupt.
They're the ones that
sounds corrupt.
Kind of, they pick candidates ahead of time.
Do they?
They help people fundraise. Like a lot of most members of Congress, they fundraise through call time.
Really?
So they take 2 to 4 hours a day and just call people for donations.
That sounds correct.
And for money so that they can run for re-election. And we operate on a fundamentally different model. Right. We do all small dollar grassroots donations because even if you're not taking money from a corporate lobbyist, if you're still only talking to and calling people who can afford to just give you $3,000 in a day, you're talking to people who are not like most working families.
Okay.
And and it's not just that you're asking them for a check, they're giving you their opinion and they're telling you what they think you should do.
Right.
And the kind of subtext of it is you should kind of do what I'm telling you to do or else I may stop giving.
Right.
And so there's like departures every now and then, but ultimately you're listening to rich people all day telling you what they think you should be doing in politics and what they think is a winning strategy. But ultimately that's very, very different than A, what actually is a winning strategy, and B, what maximizes well-being for working people.
Right.
Now, being from New York, what do you think about former Mayor Bloomberg running for president?
Okay, Bloomberg, hold on. I think before we even get into Bloomberg, let me just say that in that little piece that she just did about people calling out for donations and, people getting donations, to, rerun for elections and things like that, or run for office. We talk about this often, and it's not called corrupt like I think it should be. I think it should be something very corrupt at the fact that, even when it comes to people getting donations, the fact that money seems to be involved very directly into politics. That's what makes a lot of this shit corrupt as it is. But nobody calls it for the corruption that it is. Lobbyist, which she just mentioned, lobbyist. That's corruption to me. And it should be called out as such. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is all corrupt shit. When you bring money to or trying to bring money in, that leaves the door open to several different levels of corruption within the government. So, we talk about that a lot here on this channel. She did mention, she said she does her thing a little bit different. She takes more like small community, grassroots type of donations. So she doesn't necessarily have to be controlled by rich people's opinions. So I can slightly respect that because, only thing is now she's controlled by the working people's opinions. You're going to be controlled by somebody. It's going to be whoever's funding you. But the fact that is politics, no matter what branch, we're not talking about the presidential. She's just, I don't know exactly what position she is, but I know she's not a president or mayor or governor or nothing like that. I don't think. So no matter what level it is, money is involved. And I think that corrupts, money corrupts everything. But I'll continue. Bloomberg.
Not a good idea. I think our experiences have seen this, from stop and frisk to the surge in housing costs in New York City to even his own history on redlining to how he talks about transgender people. I don't think it's the smart thing to do. I think people think that his money makes it a safer bet against Trump, and I actually don't think that that's the case at all.
How do you explain so many black people falling in line for Bloomberg?
Well, I think a lot of people don't know Bloomberg. Like, we're here in New York City.
Now, Charlamagne actually asked a relevant question. Why the fuck are black people falling in line with Bloomberg? Why is that happening? It's ridiculous that is happening, but why is that happening? Now, to me, I place it on black people's ignorance and the fact that they believe that money, because Bloomberg is a rich motherfucker, they think that if you got money, then you are automatically smarter, you are automatically equipped. That shows in our mentality as to how we treat even black celebrities. We believe because these people have money that they are the creme de la creme, that they are the smartest people in our societies because they have been able to acquire a large financial gains in this reality. So, I can see black people falling in line with somebody like Bloomberg just because he's rich. They wouldn't give a fuck about his policies at all because black people show that same, to me, what should be that same psychological issue. It shows itself even when we deal with how black people view celebrities in general. If they have money, then black people are just going to believe that they are the greatest thing, for lack of a better saying, the greatest thing since motherfucking sliced bread. That's how black people think. But let me see what's going on here.
Under his tenure as mayor, we know exactly what he did, and
we should know
this is part of what he's doing. Like, when he comes in, swoops in super late in the game with billions of dollars at his disposal and is able to kind of shower the airwaves with his cash, but also he funds a lot of nonprofits and a lot of charities with, his Bloomberg philanthropies. And so I think
and mayoral campaigns.
Yeah, and mayoral campaigns and all sorts of stuff. And he also gave a lot to a lot of different campaigns. So I think people see what he's done with his money. They haven't, and I think a lot of people may have endorsed him without seeing what he did when he actually had a position of power.
They feel like he could beat Trump, and that's the main thing. That's what I think people look at.
That's not enough for me. Just somebody that can beat Trump.
I agree.
Right.
I agree. We have to beat Trump, but
no, we don't have to beat.
If we beat Trump,
hold on. And see, this is the part of politics where, I get it. I draw a blank. You know what I'm saying? Like, I get disconnected when they start talking about this shit like it's really real like that. Like, where they talking about what we have to do. Like, we have to beat Trump. No, we didn't choose Trump. We didn't put Trump in office. The Electoral College did. And I don't know if they're gonna have that conversation, but this we shit is trash, because when you say we, typically when people say we, they're on the side of Democrats. So Charlamagne, I'm sure, is a Democrat. This lady here is a Democrat, and probably all of them there are probably Democrats. And they're talking about we have to beat Trump. No. That's not how it works, and y'all should be talking about that. And maybe they will. Again, I may end up apologizing here, but we ain't got to do shit. The Electoral College, because Trump lost. Like, what the fuck? That should always be mentioned.
And go back to the same policies that we had before. A worse Trump is going to come. A Trump that's more sophisticated, whose fascism is less obvious. Is going to come, and things could get even worse.
Would you ever take money from Bloomberg?
Trump?
No. No.
Now,
I would never take money.
Worse Trump.
You talked about redlining and, talking about the Bronx. They're saying the Bronx is the next area. It's supposed to be growing. It was what Queens was years ago. It's what Brooklyn was years ago. How do you stop them from pushing people out of the Bronx like they did in Queens, like they did in Brooklyn, like they did in Jersey City, Hoboken, and all those areas?
Well, you stop giving tax breaks to corrupt developers.
Money. I'm telling y'all, listen, if you listen to enough political conversations, what you'll hear is that money corrupts all things. That's all. You'll hear it every time. Even as people are trying to overcomplicate politics to you, what you'll hear at all times is money is leading to corruption. Somebody want to get paid off, or somebody want to get a little money over here, a little money over there. It's money is corrupting all this shit, but they won't take money out of the game. And that's what's the crazy thing. You're never going to beat a system built on this type of corruption if money stays in the game. You have to pull that money out of the game. And I don't think that of course they're not going to do that, but if you just listen to any political conversations, when you're talking about corruption, it's always money-based.
Actually invest in the families there. It's like this idea that cleaning up a community, when people talk about cleaning up communities, they use it as a code word for displacing communities. Right. And what they mean is like cleaning the people out of some of these communities. There, yeah. And I think there are some ways that we stop that. One is that, there's an insane amount of tax incentives to
listen to it now. Money
to displacing communities, to building. We need to build housing. We absolutely need to build housing, but we need to build housing that people can actually afford to live in. Right. And the idea that we gave tax cuts to developers and deem affordable housing, like in Spanish Harlem, to be $2,000 a month for a studio apartment.
Spanish Harlem?
It's completely...
Now she's talking about Spanish Harlem. Now that's her set. Now I don't mind her repping her set, but I don't know why somebody would think I would like this woman, and she ain't said nothing really about black folk yet. So I don't know why I would like her. No issue what she's talking about now, but she did say Spanish Harlem. And again, if you listen, she's talking about this money. She said people shouldn't be able to. But the fact that this entire system is corrupt is the reason that they can. And the fact that we're trying to fight this corrupt system by voting is the reason that they continue to be corrupt, because we continue to think that voting is how you beat a corrupt system. And it's just not. It really is not.
And I, some of my families in my community, been living in our parts of the Bronx for 20, 30 years. And there's some people, 90-year-old women, that are now being forced to move out of their homes because they can't afford their rent anymore. How is a 95-year-old person or a 90-year-old person who's been living in the same neighborhood for 40 years supposed to move somewhere else? It's criminal.
The biggest thing you see is people can't get loans. They can't get the loans to buy a house. So they have to rent an apartment, and they're staying in these apartments for 20, 30 years, and they don't own anything.
And the reason also that people can't get a loan, though, is that...
Here's my problem with DJ Envy, why I think he's a dumb motherfucker. He sat here and just heard this woman say that they're purposely pushing people out of areas and raising the property value to where people can't afford it to gentrify the area. And you'll hear this motherfucker come in here talking about, well, they can't get a loan. Why would a person want to put themselves in a situation where they're in an area they're going to be outbid anyway because this is a corrupt thing. You cannot beat corruption with something that is actually sensible. Something like going and get a loan, because now you're putting people into a predatory situation. Because if the property value isn't really worth what they're saying it is, and say you going into a bank and you asking a bank for a loan. One, if you black, there's a good chance you're not gonna get that loan anyway. So see, Envy not gonna deal with that. He's just talking about, well, these people don't own anything. If you keep people poor, how are they supposed to own anything? If you don't give people loans, how are they supposed to own anything? They can't own anything, and the system is corrupt. So it's made to be this way so you can be gentrified out of your areas anyway. That's how it works. It wouldn't matter if, grandma had owned her, her apartment or house. If they got all the rest of the houses or apartments and anything, they're going to push that woman out. This shit is corrupt. You cannot beat corruption with, doing things like you're supposed to do. It just don't work like that. And that's, Envy, I don't know what the fuck this dude be talking about, man.
Directly tied to housing prices, because you can get a loan if an apartment is $45,000, $100,000, but you can't get a loan if the apartment. I was just walking through my neighborhood. There was a posting sign in the Bronx, in Parkchester, not even the South Bronx, which is like the part that they're trying to gentrify the most. In Parkchester, which is like almost the end of the 6 train, we're talking about $500,000, $300,000 to have a home or an apartment.
Wow.
I mean, like, how are you supposed to ask a normal person to qualify for a loan like that?
Right, exactly.
And a lot of it has to do with interest rates, with how we're working with banks, and a lot of it has to do with tax cuts, the kind of tax cuts that we give to developers that we don't give to families.
Mm-hmm. Question, why wouldn't you take money from Bloomberg? Only reason I ask is because I know he gave Stacey Abrams $5 million for Fair Fight 2020, and he said that he would give $1 billion.
Whoa, Stacey Abrams. Maybe this is why. Remember, I read down on Stacey Abrams. I didn't know that. So Stacey Abrams was getting funded by a racist. We know what that means. This means if Abrams got money from him like that, especially in that amount, we ain't talking about here, bitch. Here you go, $5, millions of dollars. That means she will be controlled by him in some form or another, because this is the political game. This is why this shit is corrupt, because this type of shit goes on. But Bloomberg, I didn't know that. Stacey Abrams, huh? Y'all was really, really rooting for Stacey Abrams, too.
Whoever the Democratic nominee is, why can't we take his money?
I think, first of all, I think with Fair Fight, like, that is a nonprofit. It's an organization. And that's like, if you want to give your money to charity, that's completely different than kind of flooding our democracy. For me, one thing is that I don't need it. I've worked.
You see what I'm saying, man? When people believe in this system, they talk about it different. She said, our democracy. This is not a democracy. What are you talking about? Everything you've been saying shows that this is not a democracy. You've talked about how money is corrupting all things. Why are you talking about our democracy? That's what, at this point, that's your delusion that you're talking about. Not no fucking democracy.
Really, really hard to be financially independent of wealthy people in our
exactly
in how I run for office. And so
that's what makes this an oligarchy.
It's not money that I would take because I don't need it, and B, I don't think that it's worth
the optics.
Selling your soul.
He donated all this money, so he has some influence.
Well, more the optics, but the power. Like, it's not just, I mean, people say all the time, oh, I can take this check, it doesn't influence me. It does.
Right.
It does. Subconsciously or consciously. It absolutely does.
He's just giving you the money because he wants to beat Trump. Like, he's saying, I'm giving this money just because I want somebody to beat Trump. For a good cause.
I think there's a lot of ways he can do that to beat Trump.
Hold on. Why is Charlamagne trying to push this shit through like that? Because you a sellout ass nigga? Like, basically, is that what you're saying? While you pushing you really want somebody to be able to take money from this racist motherfucker? Like, what's going on with you, bruh? I mean, we know you're a coon ass nigga, but you sound like a goddamn sellout right now.
I don't necessarily need to accept, So, he can fund lots of other candidates. He can fund organizations like Fair Fight, which is fighting voter suppression, throughout the country, not just in Georgia, but the models that they're building can be used everywhere else. So he can fund. I don't think a dollar from Michael Bloomberg's wallet is like a morally wrong thing. But for me, I rely on small dollar donations, and I think that the independence for me is important. It's more important than the cash.
The year is 2025. AOC is 35 years old. Eligible to run for president. And Bloomberg's like, here's $1 billion, AOC, rock out.
No.
Wow.
No.
Now, we talk a lot
Charlamagne
about
kept
these
pushing
Democratic
that shit.
nominees
Like,
and
you a
the past
goddamn
things that
sellout,
they've
boy.
done that have affected us negatively. But what if some of these candidates come forward now and have some plans for the future? Do we say, okay, this was in the past, they've learned from that, and now they have these great plans that they're implementing that can really help our communities and speak to the issues that I care about? Do we come to accept that? Because we don't know. Obviously, right now, Bernie Sanders looks like he's doing a great job and he's leading everybody in the polls. But whoever it is, do we rally behind that person if it's a Joe Biden or a Bloomberg? Even though their past we don't agree with.
Bernie too, though. Bernie voted for the crime bill.
He did.
I
Crime
think
bill,
so.
Bernie,
First and foremost,
he's
I think
anti-reparations. That should
I
also
think
be
that
said.
redemption in politics.
Hold on, before she even get into her spiel, let me just say that Bernie Sanders he did the crime bill as well. The same thing y'all hold Joe Biden accountable for. He did that as well. He signed that crime bill, and he's anti-reparations. So, he should be held accountable for those things. But, of course, he gets to tell y'all he marched Martin Luther King, and y'all forget all about it.
Is an acceptable thing, but you have to earn it. And it doesn't just happen from, like, running now and you have a plan and you endorse certain positions now. It needs to be proven through years of work and evolution for the right thing. And so if you were on the wrong side of issues, and then all of a sudden, and this is what happens. This is what happened with Bloomberg.
Right. All of a sudden now.
He was down with stop and frisk. He fought for it in the courts. The courts overturned it as unconstitutional. He still fought it, defended it after him being mayor. And then
this is the first time we've heard him say it was wrong. 5
minutes before he runs for president, he says, okay, maybe this wasn't the right thing.
Pops up at a black church.
So, exactly. And you can't pop up at a church 5 minutes before you're running for office and saying it's all good now. It's not like that. And it's not to say, there is room for redemption, but it needs to be done through your actions, not just whenever you want something and not just whenever you are looking for a vote. And at least for me in my first year in office, these fights are hard. They are politically inconvenient. You talk about bail reform right now in New York City, and you have people that are standing up trying to defend some of the gains that were made. This is not an easy fight. You have the Post going after you every single day for fighting for criminal justice reform. You have every single newspaper that's owned by a billionaire. You have every single TV pundit who has millions of dollars, or who are lobbyists for Uber or whomever.
Listen, call it corrupt. I get tired of these politicians playing these games where they're trying to jump around. Call it corrupt, because it is. You're describing corruption, but you're not calling it corrupt. And I mean, that's one of the things that I have an issue with, is call it what it is. You're describing in long form corruption. You're talking about money. You've mentioned lobbyists again, which is a very, very corrupt practice to me within this government. But call that shit corrupt and stop fucking around.
After you, what are people doing in that moment? What are they giving before they ask for what they want to take? And so, so I think that people need to prove through their actions and through what they're willing to withstand, how down they're going to be with our communities. But I also think that this year is just tremendously dangerous. Like, if we elect Trump again,
really,
I don't even know what is going to be left after 4 years.
You see, then what they do now, they got this Trump mongering thing. They do this. Democrats do it. It's kind of programmed into them because they are, Trump mongering. This is what I'm going to call it. Because if Donald Trump stays in there, I don't know what, four more years of that. We just not going to be able to make it. It's just like, But the Democratic Party ain't did shit for black folk, though. Ain't did shit for nobody, really, though. So you can't just say that. If you can make it through 4 years, 8 years of Obama, then why the fuck couldn't you make it through 8 years of Trump? Guess what? If you're working class people, you got to get your ass up and go to work. That's what most people are. That's what happened in the 8 years when Obama was in there. That's what's happened now. When Trump was in there, you getting your ass up and you going to work. That's what you're doing. That's all that you're doing. So to try to, these motherfuckers act like it's going to be like almost like an apocalypse or some shit like that. Stop being extra about this shit. Stop it. It's not real. They sell it as real. And this is why you cannot trust Democrats, because they have this idea that they're different. Like they feel like they're morally better or some shit like that. Like, and their racism is a little bit more covert. But that doesn't make them any better. This woman ain't said shit. We've been listening now. She is into 27 minutes. She ain't said nothing about black folk. She's talked about brown people, her people. So, bitch, you're not any better to me. Not right now. At this moment, you're not any better. None of you motherfuckers are, because nobody cares about the black man, woman, and child in a way that I feel would be moving to me. I can't tell people what's going to move them. But nobody cares about black people that's going to be moving to me at all. But she needs to call this shit corrupt. And these motherfuckers need to stop Trump mongering. Because it's trash. Like, it's complete trash.
But that's why I think we have to nominate someone who can do both.
Who is that person, though? Because, I mean, listen, everything you're saying is true, but none of these people have proven themselves when it comes to black and brown communities. Not to me. When it comes to legislation, policies.
Exactly.
Like,
good point, Charlamagne.
So I think first of all,
I just want you to stop saying black and brown.
Electoral politics is always going to be disappointing to a certain extent.
That's funny to you,
and I think that there is a problem where we lean on saviorism a lot.
Yes.
And like no elected official is gonna save anybody,
right?
And I'm saying that as an elected
what's the point?
official.
Then? Tell me the
because
point.
Because first of all, it's all part of a larger system. So you can have one great, amazing, incredible elected official. They're still in a system that's completely bogged down in the legacies of racism, basically
the same
American apartheid,
so
with Jim Crow, with the genocide of Native people, with the fact that we marginalize the people who have always lived on this land, which are Latinos and descendants of Latinos who are...
Whoa, I didn't even know she was going to say, let me go back. Wait, she said what? The people that have always lived on this land are Latinos and descendants of Latinos. Hold on, let me make sure I heard her right. Because it could be, I got it fucked up. Let me make sure I'm listening to this right. Say what? Oh, my.
Anybody. And I'm saying that as an elected official. Because, first of all, it's all part of a larger system. So you can have one great, amazing, incredible elected official. They're still in a system that's completely bogged down in the legacies of racism.
Let me tell y'all, I'm pausing right here for a second. When people be saying, Rob, you should run, man, you'd be great. I'm still one person, man. The entire system is corrupt. That's basically what she's saying here. Even if you got one person, the entire system is corrupt. From top to bottom. And it's ran by money. It's corrupt. Ain't nobody about to go in there and do anything. You guys do all the work we need to do is done from the outside, man. Like, nobody wants to feel me on that shit, but I swear, and she's saying it. But now she's double talking now. She's speaking out both sides of her fucking mouth because it's, no politician's gonna do anything, but y'all need to vote. And it's like, what the fuck for, bitch? You just said it don't mean anything. That doesn't make any sense. But let me make sure that she didn't say what I think she said. Hold on.
American apartheid, with Jim Crow, with the genocide of Native people, with, the fact that we marginalize the people who have always lived on this land, which are Latinos and descendants of Latinos who are Native American, who are descendants.
What? What? The people that have always been on this land are Latinos and descendants of Latinos. Bitch, Latino ain't a race. What the fuck do these people be talking about? I told y'all, listen, we talked about this yesterday. I'm going to calm down. I'm going to get all the way, I'm going to bring it all the way back down. Okay. She said Latinos and descendants of Latinos. And we know that Latino is not a motherfucking race, nor can somebody be a descendant of a fucking Latino. What you are is a taco-eating, Spanish-speaking descendant of caves. We talked about this. And you wasn't there. I understand your confusion because you wasn't there. You didn't come show up the other day. But as I look down off in your motherfucking cave, that pinata you got hanging up means nothing to me. You're not going to fool me with the fucking sombrero. I'm not going to be fooled with the big hat. I still see that you a DOC. Stop fucking playing with me. And for you to be sitting here and you have triple down. She ain't talking about nobody black. When the fuck did somebody say the Native Americans is Latinos? These is black folk. Black people. That's what it was. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that some Native Americans in South America may not can be classified in that, and I still can't even give it. I was about to give her that, but I still can't because these people were dark people. These is black folk. Now, they called them red, but it's black peoples, man. What are you talking about? Descendants of Latinos. Like, maybe maybe I jumped the gun. Let me see.
Right, Native Americans. So I think that
you gonna keep going?
There's knowing that
no one's going to say Charlamagne.
Really important and what's special right now about this moment is that we are starting to get politicians that are accountable to mass movements.
Oh my God!
And I think Bernie Sanders has that accountability to mass movements. I think you have some folks you had some great candidates in this. Julian Castro. I think Elizabeth Warren has some of that accountability as well. And
you notice how when she say the Spanish name, she try to be all extra Spanish, like Julian Castro. Like, bitch, shut the fuck up, yo. Shut up. Ain't named nobody black yet. Let me see.
And we're just starting to get that. So I understand why people look at this whole field and don't feel particularly inspired. Mm-hmm. But I think if we continue to support those candidates that are accountable to mass movements. Wow. And I think that Bernie is the most accountable to mass movements.
Who would you like to see as his vice president?
Got to be a black woman.
I mean, of course, we'd like to see diversity on that slate. There's a lot of great candidates out there. I don't know.
Are there people you like in particular? Have you been thinking about it? Like,
Charlamagne says it got to be a black woman. Now, we know that Bernie Sanders, if y'all watch my videos, we did another breakfast interview that was a black woman who said that Bernie Sanders is racist. Now, the type of black woman that Bernie Sanders would need by his side would have to be one that is at least, I'm going to say about 75 to 80% coon. She would have to be. Because what happens is Bernie Sanders with black people who are strong, he don't fuck with strong black people like that. He don't do that like that. You have to be on this whole, capitalism is greater than racism wave. And you cannot stand up for this. This is what the black woman said whenever she talked about Bernie Sanders. You have to be on that wave. Classism, you have to be on that wave. You cannot come out here and specifically be talking about black folk. So he would need a black woman that has a high level of coon shit going on inside of her. That's what he would need if he's going to get a black woman, because I don't know that the need is there for a black woman, like Charlamagne suggested that there was a need. He needs to have a black woman. I don't know if that's necessarily a need, but let's see how this thing goes.
I haven't thought about it a lot, but I know. I mean, I have no idea. I'm gonna get in trouble.
I'd love to see Nina Turner with Bernie.
Nina Turner's incredible.
I think that Bloomberg is going to announce Stacey Abrams. Mm. And I think Biden and Senator Harris would be formidable.
Hold on, yo. If Stacey Abrams run with Bloomberg, I'm gonna bang on Stacey Abrams, because I was banging on her the first time she ran. She has very problematic ideals and she worships whiteness. So Stacey Abrams is trash. She talks that black talk, but she worships whiteness. We showed that. And I forget the brother that was running with her. Both of them worshiping whiteness. And I don't agree with that. But wait, what? I got to find out about the first. Let me go back, because I don't know about this woman that he's saying should run with Bernie. I don't even know who she is. I'm going to have to do some research on her.
Oh, I understand why people look at this whole field and don't feel particularly inspired. Mm-hmm. But I think if we continue to support those candidates that are accountable to mass movements. And I think that Bernie is the most accountable.
Of course, he's your mentor.
Who would you like to see as his vice president?
Got to be a black woman.
I mean,
Gotta be
of course, we'd like to see diversity on that slate. There's a lot of great candidates out there. I don't know.
Are there people you like in particular? Have you been thinking about it? Like,
I haven't thought about it a lot, but I know. I mean,
some shit.
I mean, I have no idea. I'm gonna get in trouble.
I'd love to see Nina Turner with
Nina Turner. I gotta do some more research on her.
I think that Bloomberg is going to announce Stacey Abrams.
Bloomberg Abrams.
And I think Biden and Senator Harris would be formidable.
Senator
I think
Harris,
you have to have
Kamala.
Yeah, I think it's important to have that diversity at the top of the ticket, and what that.
She keeps saying diversity, not black. I want y'all to notice that, but. Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, like, what are these real talks? Like, is this what's going on out here? I gotta do some research on this Erica, the Turner lady. I never even heard of her. Well, maybe I have and don't remember. But what is this?
It's not just, but I think it's really important that we don't just start engaging in tokenism. Like, it's not just about putting a woman of color or a black woman just because they're a woman of color or a black woman. It's like,
oh no, those three are more than qualified.
Of course, and so. Following through on those commitments to our community as well, and talking about these issues intersectionally, because minimum wage is a racialized policy, and housing is racialized policy, and healthcare is racialized policy, and there are a lot of people out here that think this is like class versus race, and I think it's the most mistaken assessment.
That's what Bernie Sanders thinks, your mentor. Like, what are you talking about? Let me hear how you do this.
An analysis there is, because people a lot of times they think first of all in America, race and class are not separable. Like, they cannot be separated.
Really?
There's this amazing article that was done by
talk to your boy Bernie then.
Project, and she talked about how American capitalism started on the plantation, which is true, because you took this huge labor source and you stole it. Right. And you turned America into a superpower off of it, off of free labor and the owning of human beings. And that is not something that just happened a long time ago. Right. That wealth then was passed down to the next generation and the next generation and the next generation. And then it was protected with policies like Jim Crow, like redlining, like mass incarceration, that protected that racialized concentration of wealth in the United States of America. And
she's actually making an argument pro-reparations. This is what she's doing. Now, she may not know she's doing it, but if you listen closely, that's what she's doing, even though she's not coming out about it. And I'm surprised Charlamagne hasn't asked her about it yet, and I don't know if he's going to at any point here. But right now would be a perfect time for him to ask her about reparations, because she's describing the claim that we are owed this. So she's actually describing it. Let me see what happens here.
People say it's class, not race. There is no such thing. And
that's what Bernie Sanders says, though.
It's like,
are you going to criticize him?
It's like when you're eating something and it's like, take the eggs out of it after it's already been cooked. It's like, that's how people try to talk about this issue, as though black women aren't some of the largest proportion of people who are earning $15 an hour or less than $15 an hour, who should be earning $15 an hour, as though healthcare issues aren't impacting our communities in disproportionate ways, like childhood asthma is the highest in the South Bronx. And so I think it's really important that we take an intersectional approach to things. But that's not to say that, like, there's a lot of people who will come back and they're like, okay, well, I'm white, I grew up poor. Talk to me about my privilege. Like, I didn't grow up privileged.
Yeah, them white folks.
And so there's a certain extent where
you'll have white folk that use this. Them motherfuckers sitting around, well, I had to eat oodles and noodles sometime too, so they'll act like somehow that is equal to the racism you've been facing your whole life. You know what I'm saying? Like, they'll act like that's equal, and they'll try to actually say, they'll put that over racism. To explain away when you're talking about racism, which shows that they're racist actually when they say this stupid ass shit, is they'll act like, well, since I ate some oodles and noodles and I went hungry a couple times and my lights got turned off before, well, now we equal. Like, well, no, because you had to deal with being poor, and you see what type of psychological trauma that caused on you, right? I had to deal with being poor and being marginalized because I'm black. Something that's way different. I'm getting stopped and frisked because I'm black. So, that's way different. But when white people do that, you know at that moment, one, they're motherfucking racist, first of all. Two, they don't understand racism. And three, you shouldn't even be fucking continuing to talk to them. But let me see what she says here.
It's a common class experience, but a white person who's poor will not deal with the same racism as a black person who is just as poor.
A rich black person can go through a poor white neighborhood. I'm from the South Carolina. A rich black person can go through that poor white neighborhood, and the poor white person will still look down on that rich black person. And a heartbeat.
Or people say, oh, all you need is education. Black people with higher levels of education, oftentimes, they like the education is not like a racial equalizer for a white person with, say, was born to a higher income bracket with less education. Like these are things that are inherited, and inherited wealth is a major dynamic in the United. Like 60% of wealth in the world is inherited.
And I have a problem with that. People love you because you fight for the regular person. But
now, see, I didn't know that 60% of the world's wealth was inherited. That makes the reparations claim even more valid. And if it's like that in the world, I'm sure it shows itself that way here in America. 3Ks, I can get that shit fucked up incorporated, but I did not know that. So that's interesting.
When you look at what's going on in the Bronx, right? You look at, bodegas closing because people can't afford the rent. You look at a lot of... especially people in the Bronx, it seems like they own those medallions. And those medallions, tax medallions, have been handed down for years and years and years. And now those medallions mean nothing, because they're Uber. So how do you fight for those people?
This is actually an issue that I specifically have taken on this year. We went on to the Financial Services Committee. I serve under Chairwoman Maxine Waters. And we did a hearing on...
I don't fuck with Maxine Waters at all. In any type of way. I think she's a fucking clown. I think she's a fucking figurehead. I think she's just there to be a boisterous black woman at times, a little sassy, but not actually get shit done. That's what I think about her. I don't fuck with her at all.
We actually brought in taxi cab drivers from my district to testify about this because I think that they need a bailout.
Because they're committing suicide.
They absolutely are. They're going...
Whoa, hold on. So, the taxi cab drivers need a bailout? But nobody talking about black... Y'all see where I'm going with it? I'm going to try to make it through.
And because they see no financial path forward for them. And by the way, they were set up.
Were they set up?
This wasn't just... Uber was a huge contributing portion to it, but also the city pumped up the prices of medallions after 9/11.
For people that don't know, that don't live in New York City, to drive a yellow taxi cab driver, you had to own a medallion. Medallions were like $250,000, $300,000 to purchase.
Up to $1 million.
Up to $1 million. So people, immigrants, a lot of them would save their life savings and then pass it down to their kids. And now you don't need a medallion because Uber can you come in and just take it. So that medallion that you paid $1 million is worth nothing.
And there's all these extra prices too. Like, after a certain amount of time, there's a surcharge for that. Then there's a surcharge to go to certain parts of the city. So it does make it a lot more expensive too, just for a ride.
It does. And the thing is too, is that there's multiple components. One is that you have the Uber thing that crashed the market, really brought things down. But also you have predatory lending. So it was a perfect storm because the city pumped up the prices of medallions, and then you had these banks and different... Michael Cohen, he, Trump's guy, he was part of a taxi medallion scheme. And what he did was, and what he did and what a lot of these folks do, is that they give predatory loans. You have someone who just came to this country, father, 4 kids, and I've seen their invoices and I've seen their tax returns.
I want you to notice how when people start talking about immigrants, the passion at which they have, they feel like it's an atrocity how immigrants are treated and have been treated. Because this is the way she's setting this up for me right now. Like she's almost, beside herself with in grief because of immigrants coming over to the country and they're poor. Meanwhile, the people who built the country are even poorer and nobody's heart's pouring out for us, this is what the fuck I'm talking about. And this is why I can't fuck with people like her at all, but will continue.
Myself, they're making $20,000, $30,000 a year, and a bank approved them, or a lender approved them for $1 million loan to buy a taxi medallion. That's predatory lending.
Yeah, it is. You're right.
That's absolutely predatory lending.
You're right, it is.
And it's a combination of the price that the city set, the complete lack, like Wild West style, actions of banks targeting the people who are most vulnerable. And then you have the market influence of Uber coming in, just like wiping everything out. And so I believe, and what we've been fighting for, is a bailout for taxi drivers who got caught up in this mess because they were targeted and they were victimized by banks. There's like,
so
you look at any.
What she's saying basically is that she is coming in here trying to get a bailout for immigrants. And still, I haven't heard of anything that she's fighting for black people. The person who told me that I might like her, maybe they were fucking with me. I don't know, but I ain't heard it yet. She got some good points.
You were just talking about how people can't get a loan to purchase a home here in New York City. Then, like, on what business does a bank or a lender have giving someone making $20K $1 million, saddling them with $1 million worth of debt? It is wrong. So here's the ultimate crux when it comes to our politics. When it comes to bailing out a bank, it's the easiest thing in the world to do.
Right. We saw.
When it comes to bailing out these taxi cab medallions, all we're hearing right now is excuses.
Right.
And so I do think we are making progress on this issue. We did a congressional hearing, and they're now starting to explore a solution here. But again, it was because of movement spaces. This didn't happen because I woke up one day and say, okay, what do I want to do for people? It was because we're working in conjunction with people, because drivers started to organize and they came to my office. And when we talk about the importance of elections, the thing that's important to me is what's important is electing people who are accountable to movements, who will be responsive to that. But elected officials aren't here to save anybody. They need to be responsive, and they are not right now.
Now, you mentioned generational wealth too, and in our communities, a lot of kids now are starting to make money. But we can't pass that money down to our kids because we're being taxed so high when we die, but yet you have other people that's been doing it for so long, and they can create generational wealth. You have white people that pass money down, but we can never create generational wealth because we're always taxed. How do we stop that?
Now, what Envy's talking about right now is where you'll have, in situations where you have these mega rich white man and his mama, and they hide their money. To avoid tax evasion is real shit. These motherfuckers really got this shit. They got this shit down to a science. It was exposed some years back. I've actually even watched a documentary on how these motherfuckers evade taxes and shit like that. I forget the name of it. Fuck. I'm mad I forgot the name of it. But these motherfuckers live that life. They avoid all types of taxes. They just get money and avoid paying taxes at all. But we, the regular people, paying taxes all the time. But the richest motherfuckers in the world don't pay shit because they found the ways to avoid that shit. That's what Envy talking about here.
Well, I think, first of all, I think it's less tax and it's more the structures. Well, maybe it is tax in a way in that, like, a lot of very wealthy people, they know how to hide their wealth.
Right. Yeah,
and so
exactly.
And so, but even when you look at things like an estate taxes don't kick in until you're at like millions of dollars. So until you're at the point where someone in your family is passing away and they are not like 1 million or 2 million, but millions and millions of dollars, that's when something like an estate tax kicks in. But I do think that people need to be paying their fair share because a lot of people are parking their money in the Cayman Islands.
Right. This is where you should have started right here.
There's a whole slew of...
she should have started here. Like, what was the whole point of talking about a fucking estate tax? Like, what was the point of you talking about that? Talk about these motherfuckers hiding and cheating and goddamn corruption. Talk about that shit.
Of documents that came out years ago, Panama Papers, that talked about how much of global wealth is being hidden and skirted away. And that's money. It's so criminal because what you're asking is for everyday people to actually pay for the systems that we use in our country.
Right.
Whereas the wealthiest people benefit from those systems.
Right.
They benefit from our patent system. There's a reason America has so much innovation. It's because we have very strong patent protection laws. That if you develop a technology, your intellectual property can be deemed as yours. And so we bet.
Now see, here's a situation where she could have went back a little ways and talked about, again, another would be a justice claim for reparations, or just to tell the truth. That you can talk about how great the patent system is, but you can't talk about how great the patent system is without talking about the fact that so many patents were stolen from black people. As you talked about slavery, you can't just come in here and you gotta do it
from
big.
All of these different kinds of systems, but the people who benefit from it don't pay back into it, and that's why I think that's why Bernie Sanders scares a lot of these folks, because they're participating in a lot of this stuff.
Here we go.
He scares people who are hiding their wealth. He scares people who make billions of dollars off of paying people modern day, like less than subsistence wages.
How do you feel about Bernie bros and gals who attack people who speak out against Bernie on social media?
Well, when I see some of this behavior, it's unacceptable, right?
Wait a minute. Who the fuck is Bernie bros and gals? I didn't even know that was a thing. So we got, what is like a little clique? Like what they doing? Like they just banging and trolling or what? What they doing?
Attacking a person personally. It's one thing to be tough in a debate and to point out hypocrisy and to say, this doesn't make any sense, or this position hurts working people. It's one thing to say that. It's another thing to just be dehumanizing.
Right.
And the thing about the internet is that it is just like it puts dehumanization on hyperspeed. And we see that everywhere from our schools all the way up to, adults. Like, it's just so easy now for a kid to drop a comment, for a person to drop a comment that they would never say in real life.
Exactly.
You experience that.
I deal with that shit.
Oh, yeah.
I deal with that shit.
The president took some shots with you. I think he would never say to you.
He would not.
A whack job.
A whack job.
Yeah, he never would. He'd keep that same energy.
I always think it's a compliment.
Keep that same energy when you see me, Donald.
I think it's a compliment when Donald Trump doesn't like me. It's like I'm doing something right.
Yeah, well, I think he's scared. But
let me ask you this. How much do you experience sexism in your position? Because I was looking the other day, and I think if it was a man in your position, you wouldn't get as much criticism as you do. But I was seeing how they were criticizing you for wearing a dress that costs $200-something.
Yeah.
But men wear suits. They don't ever ask, okay, how much was his suit? How much was his tie? How much were his cufflinks? How much did he spend on that? Yeah. But I saw them really coming hard at you just over a dress that you wore.
It's like asking how you navigate race in the world. I mean, it's literally who you are. Virtually every reaction to you is racialized or sexualized in some way. It's not like I run through the world and there's no photos and that it's just candidate A says this and you vote based on that. We all have subconscious biases, and especially if you're a woman of color on the internet, it's open season. But it can also be your superpower, too. And I think a lot of times people want us to shy away from being feminine, from being black, from being brown, to be to temper ourselves, to be less than, to change how we talk, to change how we dress, because there is profound cultural power that helps us communicate important political concepts and economic concepts.
Were you surprised when Donald Trump, we'll go back to that, were you surprised when he sent out that tweet?
No.
You weren't surprised? You knew it was coming?
I felt it coming because he's obsessed with television, and so he responds to things that he sees on television, and because I'm on Fox News all the time, it felt like it was kind of a matter of time. But also, he doesn't like attention not being on him. So if attention's on anyone else, if it's on Adam Schiff, it's on Nancy Pelosi, if it's on Colin Kaepernick, he's gonna try to find a way to reel that back into himself. And he is, because he's a narcissist, but he is good at it.
I don't know if I blame the media for that or him, because it's like
it's both.
Yeah.
It's like an addictive, unhealthy relationship that they have. They can't stop covering him, and he can't stop consuming it.
Isn't that dangerous for you though? Like being AOC when you have the president calling you a whack job, people coming at you. Isn't that dangerous?
It's very dangerous. Yeah. It's very dangerous. Yeah. I mean, I had a point last year where I would wake up in the morning and I'd look at pictures of people who were trying to harm me that day. Wow. Like over my breakfast, you know? And and a lot of times it was white supremacists.
Of course.
And it's very real. Like, it's very, very real. And they're
the largest terrorist group in America and has been since their inception. That's the truth of the matter is they have been since their inception. They just classified up in New Jersey. They made the white supremacist the number one threat up there. But since the beginning of the KKK, they have been the number one terrorist group in America the entire time. And anybody, I know the government doesn't necessarily say it like that, but if you study, you'll see that's what it is. That's how it is. But the thing about her is, I want to hear her say something about getting herself a goddamn gun, because it's one thing to be scared. It's a whole nother thing to get yourself a motherfucking gun.
It's scary. And that's why I think when people, like, especially on the far right, they're like, oh, this is an attention thing. It's like, I am not doing this for my health.
It's actually bad for your health.
It is.
Dangerous.
It is.
As you laugh hard for no reason.
But I think that ultimately,
what
like,
the fuck was that?
Whether it's in a high profile way, but there are tons of ways in which people stand up in low profile ways. When you're at your job and you're in a room and everyone is saying something wrong, it's really scary to stand up to your boss. Or it's like really scary to be, or if you're hanging out with your friends and let's say you're hanging out with a bunch of guy friends and they're all like kind of talking about someone in a really dehumanizing way, it's really hard to stand up and to say those things because you can get, there's social consequences. Mm-hmm. You could feel like you're being ostracized or you lose your job. Right. But now is the moment for that. Like right now is the moment for that.
So do you pull up to the Bronx and hire some goons? What do you do?
I actually feel safest in the Bronx.
I figured that. Yeah. The Bronx ain't gonna let that happen.
I feel safest in Bronx. It's when I'm in D.C. that I feel way less safe, actually.
Bring some of them brothers in Tim to D.C.
Yeah. And it's funny. I go home and like,
I live
in the same neighborhood I've always lived in, and so
maybe I'm off base.
Maybe
I'm off base. Is it illegal for a person who is in politics to carry a gun? Maybe because I could be off base, but I would rather her champion women, and particularly women, and she talk about this women of color shit she talking about. I would rather hear her champion women arming themselves and taking self-defense classes than just being scared. Like, this is all she sound like she got for the game is fear, and I don't fuck with that.
Neighbors or anyone in the building sees anything off. I mean, you know how it is. It's like a new car or anything like that. People are like, hey, have you seen that? Like, go to the store, stay in there.
And be like, be careful, there's someone outside. It doesn't look right.
But like nothing ever weird has happened. But the funniest thing was one time, New York One, like the news truck came and we were doing an interview and all my neighbors were like, New York One's out here. Like, like go to the store, hide in there. I was like, no, it's fine.
I want to ask you a few more questions. You challenged Nancy Pelosi once.
Mm-hmm. Nancy Pelosi,
you called
racist.
her Mama Bear and you said, tell people don't mess with Mama Bear.
Yeah.
So when you see
hold on. Wait, hold on. Nancy Pelosi is a fucking racist, okay? We're going to start there first. So with her being a racist, if you're saying, let me go back, make sure I'm hearing this properly. She called her mama or something? Like, what? Let me go back a little way. Let me see what's going on here. Let me go back a little ways.
Mess with Mama Bear.
Yeah.
So when you see somebody like Susan Sarandon,
Mama Bear, like why
promoting
is she
primary Nancy Pelosi? How did that make you feel?
Well, I think it like you could, and it's funny. I go home and like I live in the same neighborhood that I've always lived in, and so like if any of my neighbors or anyone in the building sees anything off, I mean, you know how it is. It's like a new car or anything like that. People are like, hey, have you seen that? Like, go to the store, stay in there,
and be like, be careful. There's someone outside. It doesn't look right.
But like nothing ever weird has happened. But the funniest thing was one time.
I still don't know how this
New York
is the
One, like the
funniest
news
thing.
truck came and we were doing an interview, and all my neighbors were like, New York One's out here, like, like go to the store, hide in there. I was like, no, it's fine.
I want to ask you a few more questions. You challenged Nancy Pelosi once.
Racist.
But on The View, you called her Mama Bear, and you said, tell people don't mess with Mama Bear.
Mama Bear? Hold on.
Like Susan Sarandon, promoting to primary Nancy Pelosi. How did that make you feel?
Well,
let's first stop here because I didn't know. I mean, I don't know much about this lady, but for her to call a racist Mama Bear and then telling people don't mess with Mama Bear, what are you talking about? If you're a so-called person of color, which you're not, you're clearly a DOC. But what are you talking about? Nancy Pelosi?
You can hold two things at the same time.
Can you? Okay, let's see.
It's kind of like when you have family and you argue with people in your family, but you're still at the end of the day a family.
Okay.
I think it's kind of like that within a party, is that ultimately,
you're supporting racists.
We're going to disagree with each other, and sometimes those disagreements are going to be big disagreements. But ultimately, we need to make sure that we defeat Trump and
here we go.
A Democratic majority.
Here we go. This fucking Trump mongering again. Like, what you mean? Like, Nancy Pelosi racist as hell.
At the end of the day, as problematic as it can seem sometimes, is better than a Republican majority. But Nancy Pelosi is just insanely skilled.
Like, whether you racist.
Agree with her or disagree with her, no one can say she doesn't know what she's doing.
I can call that bitch racist.
Random fair.
Well, first of all, you will never hear me speak out against a primary election because I won in a primary election. And so, I think it's wrong for me to close the door behind me to say, I can get here this way, but no one else should. So, just out of principle, you're not going to see me, speak out against primary elections because because it would be hypocritical. So it doesn't bother me. I think everyone has the right to run for office if that's what they want to do.
So you support incumbent candidates? Or?
I support incumbent candidates and I support primary challengers.
Gotcha.
It's all about the work that you're putting up.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. And I saw people calling you a hypocrite because you got your goddaughter into a charter school a few years ago, and they say that's a no-no for the Democratic Socialist base. How do you respond to that?
Well, it's true. One thing
that is some hypocritical shit. Now, you can't be out here on this democratic socialism shit, and then you want to take your kid away to charter school or to a charter school. That's a little hypocritical. I mean, I'm not gonna judge the bitch on it because she's already trashed me from everything else I've heard. So this wouldn't even matter to me. But her being a hypocrite would just fit into what I'm hearing her be really anyway.
Is that we do need to address situations with charter schools, I think. It doesn't mean that they're all bad. It doesn't mean that they all should 100% go away. And we saw this under Bloomberg's presidency, is that, the charter school movement, especially in New York City, started in about the 1970s. They were community charters. So it was pastors, community organizers, starting community-based schools. So the school came from the community, was for the community. And then there are other models that are almost like corporate school type of models that exploded, that hand a ton of money to these contractors. And it can, in some ways, it can be a drain sometimes on traditional public school systems. But that being said, my family's in the South Bronx. My cousin, he, and my goddaughter, he made a choice given what that was in the South Bronx. And he asked me to help him. Would I help him fill out the form so that he could pursue this choice that he made for his daughter? Right. And how are you going to tell someone no?
Of course, right.
How are you supposed to tell somebody no in that situation? Because ultimately, the present situation is that, and the situation that he was in was that we grew up and he was raised in the Bronx when dropout rates were 40, 50, 60%. And his school was completely, totally inadequate. And he was faced with the choice a generation later to send his daughter to that same school without enough improvements. So the deal is, so what we fight for is policy where he never has to make that choice again.
Isn't that the problem when you're labeled something, right? You call you a Democratic Socialist, so they can't see the nuance. You have to be one way only, right? They can't see the nuance in anything. Isn't that part of the problem?
Well, to me, I'd rather have that problem. It's like politics is about like picking your problems. And I'd rather have the problem of people saying, okay, this is what we expect her to stand up for, than someone saying, what does the Democratic Party stand for? I don't know what being a Democrat means.
And I get it because, growing up in New York, a lot of times the school, the quote-unquote zone school that you have to go to is one of the worst schools. I remember growing up as a kid, Andrew Jackson was my zone school, the first first school in the country to get metal detectors. My parents were like, you're not going there. If I have to work extra, do overtime, I'm going to put you somewhere else. But they didn't have that option because we still paid taxes, but they had to pay for a Catholic school because I couldn't go to that school. They were like, there's no way in hell I'm going to go to
he
that
went
school.
to Catholic school.
So I get it.
So the space where people will say, oh, this is hypocritical, etc. It would be hypocritical if we weren't proposing policies where
you don't have to make choices.
You don't have to make choices like that. I understand in the short term, okay, I need to send my kid to a school today. Like, what do I do? And people struggling with that choice and people trying to doing the best that they can given those conditions. But that's why we fight so that schools aren't under-resourced like that. And, we need to start having real conversations about why property taxes fund local schools. Because what it does is that it forces people to run away from each other, to say, I don't want to live next to anybody poor. I don't want to live next to it forces people to want to live with only people who are richer than them.
As crazy as that sounds, it's the truth.
Yeah. I've got a couple more questions.
That's tough.
Bernie, one of his main pushes is Medicare for all. But you recently said we may need to be flexible on that to get things done.
Yeah.
What changed?
So I appreciate the opportunity to talk about this. So because when I was talking about this issue, I was talking about our compromises with the ACA when we were trying to pass the Affordable Care Act under the Obama administration. And we had the window to fight for a public option.
I love how they say we.
And then, as we know, Joe Lieberman did his thing and we didn't get it. And so for me, I think what's really important is that we fight for the full freight of Medicare for all. And so this is not about rolling back on it at all. In fact, if anything, we should talk about why a public option is not good. And the reason, or rather not as good for sure as Medicare for all. And the reason for that is because you set up a public option for insurance. Okay.
Break it down.
Then you let all the for-profit insurers continue to kind of reign in the way that they do.
Right.
What they will do is that they will push off all the sickest people from their plans. So you get the Aetnas of the world, the Blue Cross Blue Shields, etc. The Emblem Healths and whatnot. They will start.
Let me pause it shortly. I'm just going to pause it to say this. What she should be talking about is the corruption of health insurance companies, because this shit, I've watched documentaries about this as well and read up on it. This shit corrupt. Even the health insurance and how they have their plans and everything, how that shit set up, because the CEOs at the top want to make that money. Everything that involves motherfuckers getting rich ends up being corrupt. This shit is corrupt. Even the health insurance in this country is corrupt as fuck. And it should be called out. Most definitely, it should be called out.
The bar, so that the sicker you are, the less you can afford these plans, or they'll find other ways to kick you off.
And
then they kick off all the sick
too.
People onto the public option plan. And then all of a sudden, our public option seems crazy expensive because you have all sick people and no healthy people, which, as we know, does not work in insurance. So Medicare for all as a single payer system is the best way to do it, because if you do use a public option as a middle step, it actually, in my opinion, makes it politically less feasible to get Medicare for all, because what you're doing is that you're front loading all of the worst parts of the system, and then you're asking people to politically support expanding that into the good parts. And so people tried to kind of like take it out and twist it, etc., as me saying that I believe a public option is an intermediary step. Do I think a public option, is like how that stacks up to our current system? Could there potentially be benefits? Maybe. But I think that if you really believe and if we really want to be on this fight for Medicare for all, we should fight for Medicare for all.
Okay.
She has to go with it.
Oh, man. What was the point of impeachment?
The WWE.
I think the point of impeachment is
tell the truth now, don't.
Rule of law. So the thing is if we let the president continue, if we allow the president to continue.
Hold on. Before this bitch even get into this shit. Rule of law? That's what you say? Y'all know y'all played a game. Y'all played a fucking game with people. But let me hear this rule of law logic. This is the WWE, really. But let's hear
and the House didn't act. Then it was going to be on us. Mm-hmm. Right?
Because people were criticizing when there was no impeachment.
Then it's on us. It's Democrats who are choosing not to pursue the rule of law in the United States of America.
Wow.
Now that it's, moved to the Senate and the Senate acquits, this is on Mitch McConnell. This is on Marco Rubio. This is on Ted Cruz. This is on Susan Collins. Right. This is on Lisa Murkowski. Right. They are responsible for the degradation of the rule of law and our slow descent into fascism, frankly.
I don't think
fascism.
Yeah, I mean, that's true, too. That's true. That's true. The elevator. Yeah. But I think it's a question of responsibility. And we needed, and we continue to need, to at least put up the fight to preserve our systems. And if Republicans are the ones that are willing to let that go because they are so adherent to Trump and because they bow at his feet and do whatever he tells them to do,
with every other
and because they're scared of him and all of that stuff.
Here's the thing, man. This is when you get into dishonest conversation. Because every Republican president, their team gonna fuck with them. Every Democratic president, their team gonna fuck with them. So sitting here trying to make like it seem like, it's just out of this world that a Republican fucks with Trump or they bow at his feet, like making it seem like it's some extra shit. Like, you know how this shit work. You as a Democrat fuck with Democrats, do you not? So somebody as a Republican, they gonna fuck with Trump like that. Not saying that's always an automatic rule, but I mean, come on. We know how this shit work. Like, don't be extra about how you wording this shit.
But we should not be scared of the president. If they want to be scared of the president, that's their business.
You think he loses in 2020? And the reason I say that is because I see Democrats cannibalizing each other so much. Like, somebody like Joe Rogan comes out, endorses Bernie. People get mad and say, oh, don't accept that endorsement. Why not?
Yeah.
All hands on deck.
I think, first of all, I don't think November is a sure bet for anybody. I don't think it's a sure bet for anyone.
Because it's a farce.
Anyone that is telling you that any one candidate will for sure win or any other candidate will for sure lose is lying to you. Because those are the same people that thought Hillary had it in the bag in 2016.
And that Obama would never win.
And that someone like me could never be in politics.
Trump couldn't be president.
And that Trump couldn't be president. And then after he won, there were still those same people saying he's not going to be that bad. Give him a chance. Right. So the people who are talking about who's going to win and who's going to lose this year, first of all, they are completely removed from the reality of American politics. Most of them have never knocked on a door in their life. Right. And they do not know what it is to live in America today. You're not talking
about the electoral college, though.
There is a very, it's just not certain. No matter who you nominate. You nominate the most conservative Democrat, it's a risk. You nominate the most liberal Democrat, it's a risk. You nominate the most moderate Democrat, it's a risk. And because we are in uncharted territory, which is why it's not any one person that's going to beat Donald Trump. We really need to come together in a huge mass movement, especially in electoral college states.
There we go.
This isn't about who gets the most votes. This is about who gets the most electoral college votes.
There we
so
go.
We need to be turning out, calling our friends and family in Philly, in these swing states. And whether it's, and I think
hold on.
focusing
let me pause that real quick. I can actually respect that she's talking about electoral college, and the fact that she basically just said vote don't fucking matter. Like, it's weird listening to political people talk, but electoral college, and she talked about swing states. Now the question, and this is always my question, is why are we not voting for the members of the electoral college? But I'm sure that's not going to be something that anybody ever deals with whatsoever. But she does talk about the electoral college. And I can at least respect that she even mentioned them. But I mean, by now she's lost. She can't really gain much respect with me because she lost the whole fucking interview, really. But
cities in those swing states like Philly, like Detroit, Minneapolis, are going to be very critical in making sure that we protect our country.
So if Trump wins, do we move back to where we came from?
Oh, man. Well, some of us don't have the luxury. Still in the United States. We are here. But I think, it's dangerous now. It's dangerous now. And I think what we really need to do is inspire people who didn't turn out last time to turn out this time. And
Alexandria, as far as your career in politics, do you have some goals for yourself that you see outside of Congress in the near future?
No.
Stop it. It's clear you're setting up for a presidential run.
No.
Maybe mayor, maybe governor.
I don't think. I don't know.
She's a racist.
And I'm an optimistic person, but I think that the things.
Why are they even hyping her up to run for anything else when it's clear that she don't give a fuck about black people? And Charlamagne and them aren't asking her questions about black people specifically, and that's actually pissing me the fuck off. It's just shit not over.
There's some people where you just need to put it on the line, knowing that it's going to limit your political prospects, and I'm comfortable with that. Like, I'm okay because I feel good about my first year because I called the detention camps at our border what they are.
Concentration camps.
Yes.
For your people.
I feel good that I stood up in the way that I stood up. I feel good that I stood up for a 70% wealth tax on incomes above $10 million a year. I feel good about those things. But I also know that those severely, if I wanted something bigger, I would have been much more tepid. So,
but you're building a base, though. Like, you're not, when you're eligible at 35 to run for president.
Yeah, but
so you're building a base now, like that diverse base you're talking about, that Obama coalition. You're kind of building that now.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's less about aspiring to a position as more about a mission. I 5 years ago, I didn't wake up and say, "Oh, I'm going to run for Congress." I wouldn't have been bartending in a restaurant if that was my long-term political plan. And so these last 2-3 years have been such an enormous whirlwind. And I happen to be a spiritual person. And so I wake up and just try to think of, given how things are right now, what are the best ways I can be a vessel for good? Mm-hmm. And maybe that means I continue my life in politics. Maybe it means I write books or become a professor, or I don't know, get a cabin somewhere. I have no idea. Mm-hmm. So I think for me, it's just a day-by-day thing. But I think that one of the biggest mistakes and one of the biggest reasons that our politics is so messed up is that everyone is always trying to run for president. And so it prevents them from taking courageous stances. Right. Because even though they're in a position today to do something, they're like, oh, if I do this now, how will this impact me if I want to run for president someday? No. F that.
That's right.
No. Now, I understand what she's trying to say, but the reason politics is fucked up is because it's ran by money. Like, that would have to be what you have to say after everything you've said thus far. It's money-based. It's money ran.
And so...
She means fuck, by the way.
That was the Bronx that came out. That was the Bronx that came out. F that.
And so I don't think that we should be making decisions based on a positional aspiration. I think we should be taking positions and doing work based on what we're trying to accomplish in this country.
How many times have you called President Donald Trump an F-boy when nobody's around? Because you let that F that fly.
I do have a potty mouth not in public.
You're from the Bronx. You're from the Bronx. From the Bronx. Well, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
You don't be a stranger.
No, of course. Thank you for having me.
So now, first I want to say I appreciate everybody who sat through that with me. I mean, it was a longer video. I told y'all it would be, though. But whoever sent me this and said that I might like her, I understand to a very small degree. Some of the things that she said were cool, but she's not hard enough. I don't like fluffy motherfuckers. I really don't. I think because fluffy equals cowardice, typically, and she kind of toes the line. You can tell she's clearly not for black people at all. She's for her own people. There's nothing wrong with that to me, but I do not want it to be confused that she is for black people. She is for brown people. We sit here and listen to her say that the goddamn the ancestors of Latinos, like, what are you talking about? Like, these were the indigenous people, not black people. The people that she's backing, all of them got somewhere in their fucking name. Like, she's for her own people. I don't have an issue with that. But I can't be for her because I know she's a DOC with a pinata and a fucking sombrero eating some tacos. I know that. She's for her people. That's fine. She's not for black people. She'll try to, galvanize black support by acting like she's for that and talking about people of color. But I don't see her being really about that life, whereas black people are concerned. Disappointed. I shouldn't be disappointed in Charlemagne at this point anymore. I see him as he's a coon ass nigga, and he's a clown ass nigga, and him not saying anything about specifically black issues, or at least asking some questions as to how she feels about reparations and things like that. I think he gave her really light questions. And he did not challenge her, and he may have this affection that he's shown for white women up there on this show. He typically takes it easy on these DOC hoes, and that's just normally how he does. But he kept it real light on her. They all really did. Nobody really challenged her at all, and that's just what I see when I look at this shit. Is you got black men sitting up there being mesmerized by the caves, and I don't fuck with that shit, but yeah, that's all the fuck I wanted to say. I really appreciate anybody who stayed along to watch this with me. Mad love to you. B123, y'all already know what the fuck it is. Black first, second, and third.